Welcome to this next episode here in Building Micro Flash, my 3-pound combat robot. I'm Jason, the creator of Team Rocket Robotics, and today we're going to get this robot to be driving around. So our first step here we got to do is to pretty much get rid of this, which of course this is the 3D printed prototype motor structure frame, whatever you want to call it, that I built in the last episode, and let's replace it with the actual aluminum frame and of course the real motors and electronics. So building this frame should be pretty easy and pretty straightforward, considering that I already went ahead and kind of had the whole thing done via rapid prototyping with my 3D printer, but it didn't go quite as expected. So at some point here in my design process in Photoshop, where I'm basically laying down paper templates that I'm going to use to build the final aluminum pieces, I mismeasured something. In fact, what I mismeasured was the width between the bolts that hold on little tabs, which then mount this thing down to the frame. It's not a super serious issue, fortunately. The robot can operate fine without it, and there's a good chance that I'm just going to run with this design flaw into the competition in November. But it does make assembling this thing a little bit more difficult, and I had to remove a few bolts to get everything to fit together. But fortunately, like I said, it's not a big issue. The motors fit in there well, things clamp down, and it fits into the frame without any serious issues. So before we finish building the frame, let me jump over here to the electronics to talk about that for a bit. So the two motors I have here came from servoscity.com. They sell all sorts of motors, electronics, all sorts of stuff like that. These are 540 RPM planetary gear motors. They're very similar to what you can find on the popular site botkits.com, but they are a little bit slower for a little bit higher torque. Based on my estimates, you're probably looking at crossing an 8-foot box in about 3 seconds. And I can confirm with driving tests about what it ended up being, so I got that right, which is, well, a good thing to be honest with you. And then moving on to the speed controller, this guy is from botkits.com. It is their Scorpion electronic speed controller. I'm going to be running it off a 3S LiPo battery, which is a little bit over 11 volts when fully charged. So it's going to actually end up having the motors be a little bit less than 540 RPMs, because that number is for when they're at 12 volts of power. So we're probably looking closer to maybe 500 RPMs, but it's still plenty enough speed for this small little robot. Now supposedly this ESC is really durable, and hopefully it is. We'll find out if it survives combat or not. So far it hasn't caused any issues, and hopefully it won't. I mean, there was a little bit of setup because you have to set your maximum ranges of your RC controller, but that's not a big issue. So things have gone really well, and hopefully it continues to hold up throughout the competition. Now we get to the part here where I got a little bit of just kind of flashbacks to how things used to be 16 years ago when I first built these things. I'm like trying to plug in the speed controller servo wires into the receiver. I'm like, they don't fit quite well. For you see, 16 years ago, there were several different manufacturers of RC equipment. You had Futaba, High-Tech, something called JR, or something like that. And they all had their own different types of servo connectors. You couldn't plug one into the other. It just didn't work that way. So I think the wires might have been reversed in some of them. So if it didn't quite fit, you'd go ahead and buy an adapter from the hobby store. So that's what I did. I went over to the local hobby store, asked them about an adapter for Spectrum radios, and they kind of stared at me like I was crazy. Because apparently that's no longer a thing. All the connectors seem to be just fully compatible. And the problem with Spectrum receivers is they just got a very, very tight fit. You really got to jam that wire in there, apparently. That's what they told me. And, well, it worked. I didn't blow anything up. So that's good. Let's finish this build and get this robot driving. Alright, so everything's wired up. I've gone ahead, binded the receiver. That's looking good. Things are great. Let's go hit the accelerator. Awesome. And there goes off the table. Well, a little bit of out of controlness there. But let me go ahead. I got to do some more testing. A little bit more configuration. Make sure all left and right works as expected, because I might have to go in and change the settings inside the radio and make things flip, whatever that kind of stuff is. But let me get that figured out, and let's go downstairs in the basement apartment complex and do a little bit of driving. There you go. I did about 10 minutes of driving down the basement and everything worked great. By the time I was done, battery is still somewhat charged at least, because the ESC does have a battery cutoff. It'll kind of kill things if the voltage drops too low. That's a safety thing with lithium-ion batteries. So that didn't happen, which is good. I think though the main current draw is going to be the weapon motor. I'm not sure if I have a big enough battery for 3 minutes of weapon power. I don't know. I'll find that out when I start testing that thing out here pretty shortly. But after 10 minutes of driving, the motors weren't hot, battery wasn't hot, so that's all a good sign, right? So nothing's really heating up too bad, so awesome. All right, so with that, once the motor cage was all assembled, I put it on the scale here, and we came out to about 380 grams-ish, which I'm going to have to work with that because, I mean, that's all my only option is at this point, right? There isn't a whole lot of ways I can reduce the weight. Maybe different wheels, maybe a little bit, but for the most part, I think I'm going to be good with about 380 grams or so for the completed motor cage. But next up, I'm probably going to start working on the frame a little bit, the actual aluminum frame. But first, I probably also need to sort out some of the final details of the weapon, because in that driving video, basically the weapon was just kind of taped in place. There was a weight there in the front, just kind of put a counterbalance of weight to the front of the robot. But obviously the weapon wasn't active by any means. There was a bunch of tape up there holding the frame together, holding the 3D printed prototype frame together. Anyway, that's rambling. So once again, my name is Jason. I'm the creator of Tabletop Battlefield. I am the creator of Tabletop Battlefield. That's not what I'm talking about today. I'm the creator of Team Rocker Robotics. I want to thank you guys all for watching this video. To follow along live over at twitch.tv, head over to twitch.tv/Rocker Robotics. And usually 1 or 2 nights a week I go live building something about the robot, assuming I have something to assemble live or do whatever it may be. So with that, once again, thanks for watching and have a good night.